A fire hydrant rusts in the middle of nowhere. It shouldn't be here. Not in the Amazon, not wrapped in vines thick as a man's arm, not surrounded by trees older than empires, but there it stands, bright red paint flaking off like diseased skin, a monument to a madman's dream. This hydrant once belonged to Henry Ford, so did the jungle around it, or at least that's what he believed. In 1927, Ford controlled an empire built on precision, the assembly line, the $5 workday, the Model T, 15 million sold, each one identical, each one perfect. He had turned chaos into order, transformed sweating men into synchronized machines. He looked at the world and saw waste, inefficiency, disorder, and he believed, with the certainty of a prophet, that he could fix it all. But there was one thing Ford couldn't control: rubber. The British monopolized it in Southeast Asia. They set the prices. They pulled the strings. And Henry Ford, the man who bowed to no one, found himself at the mercy of foreign cartels. So he made a decision that would haunt him for decades. He would build his own rubber plantation, not in friendly territory, not in a place that made sense, in the Amazon, in hell itself. He called it Fordlandia. And the question that no one dared ask, the question that would destroy everything, was simple. Can you industrialize Eden? Can you force the jungle to bow? Ford bought the land site unseen, 4,000 square miles, roughly twice the size of Delaware, handed over by the Brazilian government for pennies because they knew something Ford didn't. The jungle eats everything. The first ships arrived in 1928, loaded with prefabricated houses, tractors, time clocks, and the machinery of civilization. American managers stepped off the boats in full business suits, wool, three-piece, suffocating. The temperature hovered at 95 degrees with 90% humidity. Within an hour, their collars were drenched. Within a week, their skin was covered in bites. Within a month, some of them were hallucinating from malaria. But Ford's orders were clear: build America. They constructed neat rows of bungalows with white picket fences. They installed fire hydrants on every corner, not because fires were a concern, but because that's what you did in a proper American town. They built a hospital, a school, a golf course, and a dance hall for mandatory square dancing lessons every Saturday night. The streets were named after Michigan towns: Dearborn Avenue, Detroit Boulevard. The cafeteria served hamburgers, canned peaches, and oatmeal, the food of American progress. There was a company store that sold soap, toothpaste, and Wonder Bread. And above it all, in the center of town, stood the clock tower. Every day at 6 a.m. the whistle blew. The workers were expected to punch in, work 8 hours with machine-like efficiency, and punch out. Assembly line discipline, Ford-approved time management. The jungle watched and waited. Henry Ford wasn't just building a rubber plantation. He was exporting a religion. Ford believed in order the way priests believe in God. He despised alcohol, tobacco, and anything that disrupted the rhythm of production. In Fordlandia, liquor was banned, dancing was regulated. Even the workers' diets were controlled, designed not for taste but for maximum caloric efficiency. The Brazilian workers, most of them indigenous or Caboclo River people, didn't understand. They had lived in the jungle for generations, working when the river was low, resting when it flooded, eating what the forest provided. Their time was measured in seasons, not seconds. Ford's managers didn't care. Efficiency, the managers said. Productivity, progress. The workers nodded. But at night, in their company-issued homes, they whispered. The jungle was angry. The spirits were restless. The white men had built their metal temple, but the forest would reclaim it. It always did. And then came the food. The cafeteria was the symbol of everything wrong with Fordlandia. Ford's nutritionists had designed the menu scientifically: oatmeal for breakfast, whole wheat bread, canned vegetables, brown rice, unrefined flour, soybeans, lots of soybeans. It was healthy, it was efficient, it was American. It was also disgusting. The workers had grown up eating manioc, fish from the river, tropical fruits, and meat roasted over open flames. Now they were being served flavorless mush on metal trays, expected to eat in silence, and told it was for their own good. The managers ate separately, of course. Behind closed doors, they dined on steaks, imported wine, and cigars, the very luxuries they denied the workforce. The tension simmered, the heat pressed down. The bugs never stopped biting. On December 20th, 1930, it exploded. It started in the cafeteria. A worker, his name lost to history, threw his tray against the wall. The crash echoed like a gunshot. Then another tray. Then another. Within minutes, the entire workforce was rioting. They smashed the windows. They overturned the tables. They stormed the kitchens and threw out every can of oatmeal, every bag of soybeans, every loaf of whole wheat bread. But they didn't stop there. They marched to the time clocks. One by one, they destroyed them. The machines that measured their lives in minutes and seconds, the devices that turned men into numbers, they smashed them with hammers, with rocks, with their bare hands, and when the clocks were nothing but wreckage, they stood in the ruins and breathed. For the first time since Ford arrived, time belonged to them again. The managers called in the Brazilian army to restore order. The riot was suppressed. The workers returned. But something had broken that couldn't be repaired. And then the jungle made its move. Ford's engineers had planted rubber trees the only way they knew how, in perfect rows, evenly spaced, industrially efficient. It looked beautiful from above, geometric, controlled, modern. But rubber trees don't grow that way in nature. In the wild, they're scattered, isolated, protected by distance and diversity. When you plant them in rows, the pests find them. The fungus spreads. The disease moves from tree to tree like wildfire. Within 2 years, leaf blight, Microcyclus uli, had destroyed the plantation. The rubber trees withered and died, their leaves falling like ash. Ford's agronomists tried everything: pesticides, crop rotation, burning and replanting. Nothing worked. The jungle had spoken. By 1934, Fordlandia was dying. By 1945, it was dead. Ford tried one more time. He built a second town, Belterra, downriver, with better soil and modern techniques. It produced rubber. Not much, not enough. And when World War II ended and synthetic rubber flooded the market, even Belterra became obsolete. In 1945, Ford sold both towns back to Brazil for pennies on the dollar. He had spent over $20 million, worth hundreds of millions today, and received almost nothing in return. The workers left. The managers left. The jungle moved back in. And Henry Ford, the man who built the empire, who dreamed of civilizing the Amazon, who believed he could export the American way of life to the ends of the earth, he never visited Fordlandia. Not once. He sent blueprints. He sent orders. He sent men to die of malaria and heat stroke and despair. But he never stepped foot in the city that bore his name. He never saw the white picket fences rotting in the humidity. He never heard the howler monkeys reclaiming the streets. He never watched the jungle erase his perfect rows, his tidy schedules, his dreams of control. Fordlandia was a ghost town before he ever had the chance to see it. There's a certain arrogance that comes with power. Ford believed that if you could control men, you could control nature. That discipline, efficiency, and American ingenuity could conquer anything, even a rainforest older than civilization itself. He built his empire on the idea that chaos could be tamed, that wildness could be scheduled, that the jungle could be taught to punch a clock. He was wrong. You can build a machine. You can force it to obey, grease its gears, and make it run on time. But a society, a culture, an ecosystem, those things have their own rules, their own rhythms, their own way of saying no. The jungle didn't destroy Fordlandia with violence. It destroyed it with patience. Today, the ruins still stand. Rusted machinery, crumbling bungalows, fire hydrants wrapped in vines. Tourists visit sometimes, take photos, and leave. The locals call it a cidade fantasma, the ghost city. But it's not a ghost. It's a warning, A warning that no matter how much steel you bring, no matter how many clocks you install, no matter how many blueprints you draw, nature doesn't negotiate, and time, in the end, belongs to no one.